Hello everyone, this is Bentley, and today for episode 6 of Tank of the Week, it's time to check up on that guy. You know who that is. You guys have asked for this, so it's time to take a look at the tank that includes Bob, our sponge. And as you can tell from this far away, last time we looked, Bob has grown quite a lot. Now, there's more to this tank than Bob. Bob is the newest visitor to this tank. However, probably the most popular one. So, let's dive into the tank and talk a little bit about what's in my Leopoldi Angel tank, which apparently is now just Bob's Pineapple Hut. So here we are looking at the Leopoldi Angels. And I had to feed them to get them to come out. You'll notice there's only 5 left. So, unfortunately, in the middle of the night, one of them bailed out of the top of the tank. I do have a lid on this tank, but it covers like basically the back 2/3 of the tank, and something spooked them in the middle of the night. Usually they stick toward the back of the tank unless it's food time, and you can just see just this beautiful bar pattern. You can see the red in the fins, and it doesn't show very well kind of just because of the angle here, but there is a kind of like little olive tone to the silver in their body, which is really, really cool to the human eye under light. But as they get kind of toward the top of the tank, they're out of the light necessarily, and it's a little harder to see that. But they've got those big, long trailer fins. They're just beautiful fish. I really enjoy them, but they're super skittish. These guys were wild caught, and they get scared at a lot of things, which is why we lid the back of the tank, because we normally, when they're scared, they hide in the back, and they'll get really rambunctious, and we've heard them hit the lid before. Up until that one jumped in the middle of the night, we've never seen them jump toward the front or jump out of the tank. I've never had to chase an angel that jumped. So it's why I've always left that lid open, or rather not lidded, just because it made it easier to feed them and all that kind of stuff. It's a very small space. If you actually were to, when we zoom back, you'll see, actually, let me zoom out just a little bit, and you'll see what I mean. The distance at the top of the tank there, you can see on the left-hand side, that rim to the underside of the rack is really not that far. So let's talk about this tank kind of in depth. We'll dive in. We've looked at the angels. They're eating. It's about the only time we'll see them. They're really cool. They like soft water. They stay about this size. This is full grown. I've yet to see any of them really pair off or see any spawning activity. But that being said, I haven't put in a purpose-built slate of any form for them to try to spawn on. Master Breeder Dean's given me a few tips. I'm going to put those into place here probably in a few months, just to see if I can find out if I've got a pair or not. But I'll start walking around the tank and look at some of the plants and, of course, Bob. So this is looking at the back right-hand side of the tank, and you'll notice all of this beautiful kind of pinkish red Rotala. This is Rotala mini butterfly. It's a really cool Rotala species. It grows super fast. Like you can see, there's a ton of it up there. There's way more down low in young stems that haven't colored up because they're not high enough up to get the super strong light. But you'll also notice back there, there's like some crypts hanging in a basket. You can just barely see them on the left-hand side. Like I'll start zooming out and you'll see them a little better. Sorry, the autofocus is going to change a little on you guys. But you see those crypts on the left-hand side. To the right, there's a single stem of Nassia pedicellata, which is a golden Nassia, or kind of yellow, and you can even see that there. It's got that yellowy green tone. With more CO2, it would get real yellow, but I'm not pushing a lot of CO2 here. And then there's just some green crypts, and you can also see a little bit, if you look hard enough, the angels are being like on camera. This is crazy. There's actually a little bit of Hygrophila penitafida hiding in the back, and we'll get a little arrow to kind of point that out right there. If we come to the front of the tank, we'll just keep zooming out, and we'll notice there's a lot more stuff up front. So let's change our viewing angle and talk about that. So here we are in the right-hand front of the side of the tank, and right away you're going to notice this big Franz Stoffel sword here. That has grown out from a small baby. It's slowly getting bigger, probably needs to come out soon. But to the right of it, this little thing here is a Kleiner Prinz sword that I've slowly been bringing back to life. It was really bad looking for a while, and it's looking a lot better. We've also got hitting over here. This right here is Bus Hades Purple. And then to the side of it is a really rare species of Anubias. That is Anubias nana bonsai, those, kind of like Pangolino, have incredibly small leaves, but they stay like Nana where they're rounded. They're not kind of a pointy or arrow-shaped leaf. And the other neat thing here, like this is not getting enough light, but it's a white marble Anubias, so it looks all green except way down here. It just needs to move to a different environment where it gets a lot more light, and that white will start coming back in. But beyond that, like, it's really simple as far as plants are in here on this side of the tank. The other side's a little more interesting, and we'll talk about that in just a sec. I really want to do some changes to this tank. I think that I want to keep the Rotala. I really love this Rotala in this tank. It stays kind of in that corner. It doesn't go too crazy on me. There is a little Ludwigia in here that's still like hiding in this back. You can see it right over here, basically. Beside the Pedicellata, which is on this edge. There's a teeny tiny Boost hiding in this cup, but we won't talk about that because it's nothing to look at. It's so small, it's hard to even tell what it is. But it was a cool kind of rare Boost I got from a friend, and it grows super slow the way it is. I'm going to move it somewhere else and try and get it to grow a little better. But I think I want to make this a little simpler. I really want to focus on Bob and the angels in this tank. So I think a lot of plants are going to come out of here, and I'm going to focus only on a few and make this a much more simple tank as far as the number of plants or the plant diversity in here. So that being said, let's talk about Bob. So here's quite a close-up on Bob, and you can tell Bob has grown quite a lot. Bob used to be very, like, a circular, right? And it's kind of grown out, and you'll notice the glass is dirty, and let me talk about that. We've been so paranoid to clean the inside of the glass around Bob, just because we don't want to disrupt. And this, by we, I mean my kind of whole household. My roommate helps clean quite often and stuff like that. So we've all been really hesitant to clean up around Bob, just because we don't want to risk damaging something that would cause the sponge colony to no longer be thriving. It's been growing so well that we're almost paranoid to really work around. So what I want to do is give you some perspective. I'm going to move this into the shot, and you can see this is a tip of a thinner highlighter. And you can look, Bob used to be about the size of the tip of this highlighter, and you can see, you know, just kind of, I know it's fuzzy, but focus is set really right over here. The difference in size of Bob now. I would say probably about a 50-cent piece in size for those that are familiar with American currency. But you also notice, like, it's kind of taken this like weird triangular, like three-pointed trident, or like dinosaur foot, as I like to call it, shape. But we can also in this shot kind of see some of that interesting veining pattern of how this colony of organisms grows out. It's such a unique thing in aquatics, especially to have in a home aquarium. And I've thoroughly enjoyed how much you all have been really interested in Bob, because to me, this is something like super nerdy. It's a little out there on the science side, and yet you guys seem just as enthusiastic about Bob as I am. So yeah, the glass is going to be dirty, and I'm sure there's going to be somebody in the comments, well, the tank's so dirty, why don't you clean the glass? I'm really trying to protect Bob here, and we don't want to kick up too much algae off of glass to where the water quality, even temporarily, changes in a way that the sponges then don't like and take a shift and no longer be thriving and growing as quickly as they seem to be doing. With that being said, and that's kind of your update on Bob. I've been really impressed by just the way that this colony of organisms is and grows. And it's not like we're adding something special to the water to feed it or anything like that. We're just kind of letting nature do its thing here. And in letting nature do its thing, we've got this really cool sponge. So let's kind of zoom back out and change our camera angle and talk about the rest of the tank. So we're over in the back left of the tank here, and you can see a few different crypts in the back, as well as some really tiny baby Hygrophila pinnatifida. And then a lot of Cryptspiralis is in here too. And as we zoom out, you're going to see a lot more. Here's the thing about this tank. I think I'm going to remove a lot of the crypts out of here. While they've been growing well, I kind of just want some different look for this tank. I think what I really want to do is simplify it and let the angels have lots of things that make them feel like they have hiding places, so that potentially I will see them toward the front of the tank a little bit more. And that'll involve letting the Rotala and the Hygrophila pinnatophyta grow out. Those are the two I know I want to keep. I'm trying to figure out if I want the Cryptospiralis or if I want something different, kind of toward the front of the tank to help give them that cover. So let's zoom out a little more and look at the rest of the plants in this tank and kind of wrap up what's going on. This is pretty zoomed in on the right front, but you'll see there's a baby Madagascar lace and a couple of Crypt Balansae up front, not Spiralis. These are ones that have recovered from having a big melt and getting too shaded out. But let's zoom out a little more and look at the rest of the front here. We'll kind of go nice and slow. There's Bob. And you can see a ton of Cryptospiralis as we zoom out on the top of the Shelly tank. So you've got like Spiralises over here, and then more over on the right-hand side. There's a couple miscellaneous Cryptwendetii species, and a big mass of floating plants that we're about to look at. Basically, I think all of these are going to come out. I think a lot of this will end up in Animal House, most likely, which I've got this really, to me, important plan for Animal House. When that comes, I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. But let's kind of shift our focus and look at the floating mass of some other stuff that I'm trying to decide what stays and what goes. So here's the mass of plants, and you can see like some Ludwigia repens, an angelfish. Man, they're all of a sudden they want to be in front of the camera. Normally when this camera's out and I'm shifting it around, they will run and hide. But they're having little territorial disputes. They just got fed, so they're gonna be a little more camera friendly. Let's put it that way. I was about to say a little more gun shy, but that would make no sense whatsoever. So we see this mass of plants, and there's like, I'm going to get our pink highlighter out again here, rather than my arrow tool, just because it's dark, and that arrow might not show well. We've got this crypt that's floating here. Up in here is a little bit more Hygrophila pinnatophyta, and also, if you can see it right here, and through here behind that crypt, is a really cool Staragine species called Bihar. And it requires CO2 and pretty strong light. So it's been floating in this tank, and it's doing fine. But it does get very tall. And I think that will be one of the things that goes to Animal House. Because it is a cool... It's not really truly a purple color, but it does get this kind of almost purplish brown hue to it. That's actually a plant that came from Gary Lang at AGA, which is really cool to me. I did not know it was his until I paid for it. Got the label, and it said, from Gary Lang. And I was like, I should have just asked the guy in person instead. There's some more Ludwigia up in this mass, and there's a little bit of, I think, a Rotala species in there too, but this is mostly just here to stay alive because I want to move it to a different tank, and the angels haven't, like, they don't mind having that extra protection in front of them. It gives them a corner that feels super protected. They can go high in the water, and they're very obscured from view where they can feel safe, and I think that's good. So part of that will involve the change of planting is to give them lots of tall stuff that has them a kind of sheltered, protected area. And maybe what we'll do is put some wood or something in here to give them hardscape that protects them as opposed to pure plants. But doing that change could also really upset them, or more importantly, upset Bob. Big changes to the entire ecosphere that we have in here could potentially have a detrimental effect to the sponge colony, which is why I haven't immediately gone, let's just throw in hardscape. I want to do this in a very slow, methodical process. And yeah, it also behooves my work schedule, but it's more about very carefully doing things so I don't upset the angels too much, and more importantly, upset Bob and the sponge colony. Let's take a full kind of shot of the tank and talk more about my, I guess you'd say, how I want to do things. So here we are looking at really the full tank, and I really like having the Rotala on the right-hand side, and I think I might leave the Kleiner Prinz sword in here. I think the bigger sword might need to leave, because they don't really use that as protection at all, although slowly but surely it's getting big enough to where if I keep it on the right-hand side, it'll create this low valley between it and the Rotala, where if the angels wanted to hide, they could. But they tend to hide in that left-hand corner over by the heater. And I think what I want to do is let the pinnatophyta grow out and start creating kind of a shelter over that way and move the existing pinnatophyta that's not that way over there. So that there's kind of this big pinnatophyta shelter for them to hide in. And toward the front, I'll figure out some kind of plant. I
I just don't want anything that's going to grow too crazy or really intrude on the flow, so that the water movement in this tank will make sure that things are getting past Bob and Bob has no issues particulate feeding on the teeny tiny microscopic particulates that those sponges need in order to survive. It's more about just making the angels feel slightly more comfortable so that potentially we could see some spawning behavior. And what we might do is put the whatever like spawning slate or whatever is going to go toward that back corner, maybe even a little front, so that they have a spot that has got some protection in front of it, but I can still see into relatively simply in order to check for eggs. Beyond that, like all those crypts, the sporalis and stuff, the big floating mass, that's all pretty much going to come out because there's other tanks to plant, and there's some other tanks that we'll talk about in Tank of the Week where they just need some changes. They need something a little extra to make them better for the fish that are in those tanks, or for just the future of what that tank's purpose is. I think like this is pretty simple. You can see, I actually really like the Nisea that's on the far right, and I'm tempted to keep that just because it's a stark color contraster and it just looks pretty. And I could easily clip that one and make some more, and I have a couple more growing out in some other tanks. But I'm not sure if I want just a ton of faster growing tall stems. I've dealt with that for quite a while, mostly in Ludwigias in this tank. And sometimes when I get super busy, it can really be a nightmare on me as far as playing catch up and getting the trims done. But I do want some good spaces for the angels to have little micro territories and feel like they're safe. Like every once in a while, they'll do this little sparring battle like you see here, or they'll sit and you might be worried like, oh, I don't know that they have enough air. This tank has plenty of oxygen. We've even like put triple the number of air stones that should be in it. There's one missing right now because it can be really distracting when shooting videos, so I'll pull it out very often when I'm shooting film. We've had multiple air stones of this thing cranking like crazy, and they will still do this same behavior that you saw where they go to the top and they just kind of gasp at the top almost. They're not really gasping, they're just like gulping at it. And I'm not sure if that's just something they do in the wild and that's why they keep doing it or what, but that's just something they've been doing. Overall, I really like this fish. I really like this tank in general, just because it's something I've kind of just let the plants do their thing. I've grown a lot of different plants in this tank. I've changed them out over time. I've seen some plants wilt away and struggle. I've seen others just seemingly come back from the dead. It's really been kind of an interesting experiment to see, and I think it's time for like a small shakeup. So once I get that done, you guys will get an update on what that is. But this is the Leopoldi and Bob tank. So let's jump back to my face and we'll finish this one out. Well, there you go, guys. There is your look inside of the Leopoldi Angel tank. I guess now it's Bob's palace, right? So yeah, I mean, it's crazy. The last time I did this video, I'm basically at the same distance. The only difference is I was standing in that video. I'm sitting in this one now just because, yeah, I like this camera angle a little better. But you can really visibly see Bob over my shoulder here compared to last time where he was this teeny tiny speck you couldn't see really. You know, he might have been the size of a dime back then, and now he's huge. He's like the size of a 50-cent piece. And for those outside of the United States, dimes are the smallest coin, 50-cent pieces are the largest. It's hard if you're outside the United States and aren't used to U.S. currency, I guess, to like really know what that means, but he's grown a lot, and you can see that just here, right? You know, he'd have been smaller than my fingertip here, and now is clearly visible. Well, the colony of sponges, right? And I really never would have suspected that the freshwater sponge would be so interesting to all of you. It's kind of neat that you guys are interested in something as nerdy as the freshwater sponge colony is, as I am. Cool note. Another member of the Greater Seattle Aquarium Society has freshwater sponges growing in their tank. And it's not the two that are previous, which is Alyssa Bentley, who doesn't live very far from me. She has freshwater sponges growing in her tank too. So there's definitely something in our water that allows the freshwater sponges to be able to live in our systems. Because we all use the exact same tap water. So let's get to the tank as a whole as kind of a summary. The Leopoldi Angels, of course, I lost one. Really sucked. I still don't know that I'm going to make any major changes because they're pretty skittish, but they stay toward the back of the tank most often unless they're begging for food. So whatever spooked that fish in the middle of the night, unlikely to happen again. It's like my cats don't really bug this room very much. Although if I'm in here, the boy cat will come and beg for attention like crazy. He's a spoiled little boy. But you know, like this plant mass that's back here, up floating in this region, right? A lot of that's going to go into other tanks, so that's going to disappear. And I mentioned that, but I think I really want to let a lot of the Pinnatifida, I was about to say Ponderdidifida, the Hygrophila Pinnatifida, start growing out of this tank and let it take over a big portion mixed with the sword that's here, although that particular sword might leave and just be sold off or something. And the Rotala, because I really like that Rotala. And then there's some mixtures like, you know, Boos and Anubius that are just going to stay where they are at because they've been doing really well in this tank. But I think I'm going to let those kind of take this tank over a little more and let those be the plants for the Angel tank. So a lot of those crypts are probably going to come out. I think they're going to go into Animal House once they start building that tank. Which, man, I've been so busy that I've put that off so much. And I know you guys are looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to it because I think the build process is going to be super fun. But I just think I want to let this go from something that I used to farm plants out of really regularly to just kind of a home for Bob and the Angels. And only minorly will I farm plants out of it because the Angels don't like it when I rip stuff out of there. And they're wildcats. They get a little spooked. And they're actually out on camera, which is great, even though they're a little fuzzy right now. But overall, I really just want to make this a good home for the Angels. I haven't seen anything that indicates potential breeding behavior. Let's see sparring like that quite a lot, which is, how awesome is that? While I'm sitting here battling at you, they just kind of spar a little. No, you get out of here. This is my spot. But I learned a trick from Dean that I need to put into place once I kind of do the final changes to this tank, so that I've upset it the last time for a while. And then I'll be putting in a particular style of slate or something like that. And that might not be slate. It might actually be some acrylic. And hopefully I can get a pair to spawn on it, or at least show me that there's a pair, so that I can work from there and try to figure out how to get some Leopoldi Angel babies, because I think that would be really, really cool. With all that being said, I hope you guys have enjoyed this tour and this big update on Bob, because, man, I didn't think Bob was going to be as popular as he's been. It's kind of nerdy. It's kind of interesting, this culture of sponges, and I didn't think that you guys would be as interested in something that level of nerdy that I'm interested in. So, cool. I'm just glad you guys like Bob and the colony of sponges. So we had to do an update here, right? And we'll do another one if we see some major changes. So let me know down below in the comments, like, what's your favorite part of this tank? Is it Bob? Is it the Angels? Is it one of the plants? What plant would you keep in this tank between the ones that I've kind of waffled on whether I'm fully decided or not? What plants would you remove that you just think, I just get that out of there, it doesn't look as good? Or maybe, yeah, get this one out of there so you can do these plants. Let me know in the comments down below. I'd really love to know just what interests you guys the most. If you like this video, of course, well, a little thumbs up. Thumbs up for Bob. Thumbs up for Bob. If you have no interest in freshwater sponges, you think that angelfish should never be kept, and the planet tanks are no fun, well, you go ahead and hit that thumbs down twice. Let me know just how much you hate it. If you're a new viewer and you haven't subscribed, consider hitting that subscribe, because you'll get to see Tank of the Week every week. Every Wednesday we have a new tank, or at least a different tank than we've seen before, with an update of what's going on. Sometimes we will have actual full-out new tanks, although not happening quite a lot anymore just because most of my tanks in my house are set up. And you get all sorts of other cool stuff. Every Saturday we have another video. That's going to be between tutorials, reviews, fish room tour type stuff, special guests, any of that kind of stuff. Those are always going to come on Saturday. I'm really looking forward to this Saturday's video. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. And that's it. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. And stay awesome. This is the Gartsy. Little like light here, shadow in the face with light behind me. Ooh. I'm such a weirdo.